Today on the podcast, we're chatting with someone who's really making his mark in the world of civil engineering, Malelo Mweemba. He's a site engineer and assistant construction manager at Stefanutti Stocks Inland Civils. And he's all about solving real on-site challenges, pushing boundaries, and bringing high-quality infrastructure to life. With 4 years experience under his belt and an EXA registration as candidate technician, Malelo has worked across everything from soil testing and geotechnical investigations to road construction, CAD design, and now managing major projects like the Sasol Biosludge to feed to Gasification build. He's super passionate about quality assurance, teamwork, and making a real impact through infrastructure, especially in South Africa's townships. Also been featured in the SAICI magazine, received a community engagement award, and continues to grow as a leader in the industry. He's just one of those guys who's just excited to show up and make things happen every day. And we can't wait to hear more about his journey, what drives him, and his vision for the future. Malelo, welcome to the show. Great to have you here, sir.
Thank you, little Tony. Thank you for having me in GVA Africa. I've been excited to come here for a while. Thank you to all your followers. Yeah.
Thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much, brother. Thank you very much. So yeah, let's start things off on your journey. What inspired you to really have an interest in civil engineering?
And I remember growing up as a child, my father used to build churches actually, and he always used to take me along on Sundays. And I think that's where my initial, interest or passion for construction and civil engineering came in, because I would be there helping to lift the bricks. And going further into school, I did engineering graphics design, and I always found myself doing well in those fields of practice, specifically in drawing houses. And I did a really great project for what they call our portfolio, and it came out well. And I think going out into university, the first thing or one of the first courses that I saw was civil engineering, and I just went with it. Yeah.
Awesome. So it was really like a homegrown interest that you always had.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was homegrown. Yeah.
okay. No, it's quite a privilege to have someone in your family who, and I've said this many times to people before, to say that if there's a family member who's interested or who's doing civil engineering or construction, it really has an influence on you as an individual. Like even with me, like
Yes.
my mom she was a teacher, but she was interested in property and stuff, and that for
Yeah.
me was like the spark. I always had an interest in civil engineering.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, having those influences in your life growing up, it actually molds you and makes it somewhat easier for you to choose what you want to do in the future, because what you're involved in at home is more going to incline you to what you're going to do as you grow up. But that's just my opinion, or in my case. Yeah, I think that's what made it easier for me.
Yeah. No, I'm really inspired by such stories. Like one of the reasons why I took a particular interest in you at engineering school, particularly, I think I've never said this to you before.
Mm.
I think we were in it's either drawings one or drawings two. In Mr. kind of what's his name, the bold guy who taught
And
us
Mr.
drawings.
Strader.
Mr. Strader, that one, he's an
Yeah,
OG, that one.
yeah,
In
he
Mr.
is.
Strader's
He is.
class. So we were busy with the project, and we were busy with I think it was a CAD project that we had to do within a specific space of time. It was a test,
Yeah.
and we quickly had to like draw this thing with CAD and then submit it, right? I remember, bruh, I was struggling with a specific element that we were busy, obviously trying to portray with the software, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
here's
yeah.
this kid, bruh, just like going through this thing, bruh, and everybody was at your table. "Yeah, but I want Malelo in thing, with
Ah,
Malelo."
man.
I was like, I sat there. I think it was you and Younger, the
Yeah,
guys that
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually saw. Like you guys, like were killing it, bro. Like I was like, this kid
Drawing
is
new
amazing.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then I saw. I was like, this kid is brilliant, bro. So your passion for the
Thank you.
industry, I could see from a very like early age, from an early stage. So big ups, man.
Thank you.
Big ups on
Thank
that.
you, Tops.
Okay, so
I hope you
second
don't
question.
mind. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thing, I hope you don't mind me calling you Drops, man, because that's the direct translation of your name. So,
No, it's pretty chill, man. Don't worry about it.
cool, cool, cool,
It's pretty
cool.
chill. That I think because of work now, I had to be a bit more formal.
Yeah,
People either
definitely.
call me Lee because
Yeah,
Lirotodi is like long, so people call me Lee at work. So it's a bit more,
yeah.
but it's chill. Don't
Cool,
worry about
cool.
it.
Mr. Lee.
So you
Thank you,
currently
Mr.
work
Lee.
at Stefanutti Stocks, right? Can you tell
Mm-hmm.
us more about what the organization stands for and what excites you about being part of the team?
Okay, my position, right? Currently a site engineer and assistant construction manager. I recently started about a year ago. I've got a year within Stefanutti Stocks, and basically my role involves taking care of my team on site and making sure that the work is done to quality, to time regulation, and on budget. So what I find myself doing a lot on site is looking at drawings. I'm just going to break it down step by step. I
No
get a
problem.
drawing, I analyze the drawing, I look for what's in that drawing that we need to construct. I look at when it's supposed to be delivered. I also look at the materials, and I look at the amount of material that we'll need, calculating quantities and making sure that we've got the right teams there to do it and that they can do it on time. That also involves me going to site, doing inspections, making sure that the quality is right, making sure that the materials have been tested to the specific quality requirements. And it also involves me getting involved quite a lot with the client on site, making sure that he's happy or she's happy with what we're building and making sure that it's according to schedule, which is quite a big deal. So that's in a nutshell what I do. I also look at the schedule quite a lot. I make sure that I think the schedule is what makes the difference in what we're doing.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
if I could put it as simply as possible, yeah.
Okay. And if you were, I'm not sure if you have been in consulting specifically. You are
Yeah.
mainly now in construction, right?
Yes.
Um, what are the differences between being a site engineer for a construction
Mm-hmm.
firm and being a resident engineer, also obviously on site for
Yes.
a consultant? Would you be able to differentiate between the two?
I think in my experience, the differences I've noticed is that as a site engineer, as um, compared to a consultant or an RE, you're definitely much more on site, number one. And that involves you making sure that what you see on a drawing is basically translated into a physical structure, which means basically you have to make sure your materials are correct. You have to make sure that they arrive on time. You have to make sure that whatever you're building is according to specification. You have to make sure that the quality is right. And I think as opposed to a consultant, you're there to make sure that this, whatever I am going to build as a site engineer, will actually work and be fit for purpose. So basically, I translate what the consultant or the RE has designed with his team, and I translate it into a physical structure that is fit for purpose. Yeah, I think that's how I could best put it.
Okay, no, thank you. Someone actually said to me because I'm basically from a consulting background. I've done all my career. I've done resident engineering consulting work.
Yes,
So it's more of like following the contractor around and making sure that the contractor complies. And someone
yes.
actually, and I don't know whether this was a like this person was throwing shade at me or what, saying that, oh, Yo, Lee, I see you like taking the easy route. Being a consultant is the easy route. You must come to construction, chief. So apparently you guys do a lot more than us, you know. I don't
You
know
know,
about that.
I was in a meeting once, and at the end, I've always wanted to be in the consulting setting. I have been in it for a very short time or in a part-time sense. However, in a meeting, someone once said to us or the construction team that, if you guys weren't here, it won't be able to be done, because we have to be there on the cold days, on the hot days, at night, during the day. We have to shout at each other sometimes, scream at each other, and work together, even when times are tough. When you
Mm.
want the concrete to be poured, before Friday, and it's been raining, the material or the supplier doesn't have the material. We have to somehow, make it work. So I think our roles are very important and they work hand in hand. I don't think construction will be possible without you guys as REs to make sure that what we're doing is correct and engineeringly sound. And at the same time, it won't work if we are not there to, put in the hard work, put in the blood, sweat, and tears, as some would say, to make sure that you get your product. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining the differences. I think it's one of those things that sometimes get lost in translation. People think it's the same thing, and it's actually not.
Oh, it's quite different. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our next question. You mentioned that you've worked at Civil Lab at the Central University of Technology, where you were involved in research and tendering. So I just
Yeah.
want to find out, how has that research experience influenced how you approach construction projects today? Like, has it made a difference?
I think it played quite a major role because coming out of university, I was quite raw. I mean, I was working at the university, but theoretical knowledge was just most of what I knew. So putting myself in that position or getting that position allowed me to have an more of an in-depth view as to what actually goes into making an engineering project work, but more specifically structures and soil. Like when you're coming out, you have this broad view of how things are constructed or how you're supposed to start, doing something. But I think in the research sense, you taught to look at what the actual problem is. What are we trying to look for? You 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 have the basic sense that you get there, you just dig, and
Mm.
you put your
Mm.
foundation, and everything is gonna be hunky dory.
Yeah.
But in
Mm.
reality, there are a lot of things that actually go into quite a number of our structures.
Yeah.
For example, in the Free State, what I learned is that we have got quite a lot of expansive soils, and you find that a lot of the residential settlements, especially in our townships or where they're doing RDPs, are placed on
Yeah.
such areas with either dolomite or expansive glaze. And after 5 or 10 years, you've got huge cracks going on in the houses. So it taught me that as much as it's normalized from what we see in small construction companies to just go with the flow, not do your testing, not make sure that wherever you're going to be building is correct and is the materials that are found there are sound. Um, you actually need to look deeper. You need the engineers to go in there and test the ground and test, what's actually going on underneath there. So, yeah, it
Mm.
put that basis of before anything can start, you need to see the feasibility. You need to see if the materials that you're going to be using will work and if your building will last long. I'm
Mm.
pretty sure you,
Mm.
you can relate to that setting because you're the engineer and you have to make sure that these things are right before anything happens. And accountability was quite a big one because if I test something and I test it to be wrong, when it's right or right when it's wrong. At the end of the day, the onus comes to me. I'm the one who told you that this will work. But then if it doesn't work, I'm accountable for it. So there were a lot of occasions where I would do tests when I was starting out. Your
Mm.
falling cone, your Atterberg limits, shrinkage, consolidation, where I got it wrong, and I would be told that, hey man, you're the one who's saying this is right, but it's
Mm.
wrong. You get so you have to make sure that your work as an engineer is solid. And even when you are wrong, you should be able to say, how did I get this wrong? I thought this was right because of one, two, and three. And I think those are the things that were instilled to me at the lab, and I appreciate them quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how scientific civil engineering actually is. Most of us coming to the industry, we think I'm just gonna build skyscrapers, I'm just gonna build stuff. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of research that goes into things like materials, geotechnical studies, or like the behavior of soils, the behavior of concrete, the behavior of steel, the
Yes.
behavior of different elements that go into erecting of a structure. And
Yeah.
I think the background that you have definitely gives you an edge.
Yeah. I mean, working together with there was quite a lot of people I've worked with at the lab. Prof. Theron was quite influential in my career, um, and a number of the CUT lecturers there who I actually ended up working with further, other than just academic work, taught me that, in order for you to make a success of yourself in this industry, you have to know your stuff. And science plays quite a big role in it.
I
Um, you
realized.
you think that just pouring concrete and letting it, dry is, the concrete, being strong, as strong as it can possibly be, but it has to cure. You have to test it. There are admixtures. Asphalt, you don't just lay it there. It has to be the right temperature or the right thickness, compaction levels. I mean, I've learned that in order for you to make sure that your work is right, you need to know what actually has to go into it. And it's not just, do it as you see it on YouTube, but there's a lot more that goes into it than, you know, as the eye can see, as far as the eye can see. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to speak more about especially the research aspect, because I really believe that that is one of the missing sort of cultures now in our industry, like a very
Mm.
strong research backed, um, especially for undergrads or the young engineers. I don't think research is really emphasized as much as other fields where
Yeah.
people pursue postgraduate study. Most people just end at BTech and they think they're fine.
Yeah.
So I'd like us to do more, to talk more about it in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think research is the backbone of, engineering. Someone had to figure out that concrete needs to cure, bolts have to be galvanized. I mean, a lot of things that are actually our reality needed someone to do research on it. Your Leonardo da Vinci's, your greats, they were researchers in essence. We just put into practice what they've studied on. So I think it's a great thing. A lot of South African youth need to focus on research because there's so much more we can achieve with it. It's the backbone, I think, of engineering, research, science.
Yeah. And I honestly believe that that is like the essence of what being an engineer is. Like when you're on site, most people just think of it as I just need to like apply what is on the drawings, right?
Yeah,
But then there are instances, which is all good and well, but there are instances where a challenge will arise on site that is not necessarily defined clearly on on
on the
on the
drawing.
drawing. And then
Yeah,
now the temptation is always to ask your supervisor what to do if you're a young engineer, right? But in essence, what we actually are called sort of to do is to synthesize or engineer a solution in our heads,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's why engineering is the highest office in the
Yeah.
built environment space. Like, you need to come up with the solution, and then as soon as it makes sense in your mind, and you obviously have the necessary standards to back you up, and the
Yeah.
necessary specifications, and the calculations, if maybe it's
Yes.
a solution that needs a specific calculation, then you implement it. That's really what being an engineer is all about at the end of the day. And research plays a huge role in that, because you need to understand the different aspects of the behavior of materials and how it will
Yes.
affect your solution,
Yes. If in my experience, you find a situation where something goes wrong, a challenge comes along the way. They say you are the engineer. That's why you are here. You know, everybody's looking at you for the answer. Something
Yeah.
reacts differently as to what it was supposed to, and you expected to have the answer. And I think one thing that's important is before you actually go into the work you're doing, it's important for you to have a background of what is going to happen or what is expected to happen on site. There was a situation where we were pouring an epoxy grout, which is basically a grout that is resistant to vibration and won't cause cracking. So in tension, it's strong as well as in compression. So it was for pump bases. And, you know, the guys were saying that, the guys on site, they say, man, lento lena izoba-right, tell nje. But in order for it to work to its, intended use, you have to make sure that it's mixed for the right amount of time. You have to make sure that you pour it in the necessary layers. You can't just pour everything at once. You have to make sure that it cures for the right amount of time. And you have to make sure that once you're done, it's cured and it's cut and it's proper, and it's painted over and stuff like that. So it's easy to look over all of those things and just mix it and pour. And it's easy for you as an engineer to be swayed to do something as it's always been done on site. And just a word of caution to young engineers is that, hey man, you'll find guys there on site that know everything. They're experienced, but at the same time, as an engineer, you can't just let things, be done as they have always been done just because,
Yes.
you found it like that. You have to make sure that
Yeah.
you do it according to what you have read and what you have researched. Yeah, side note.
Nah, that's true. That's true. Like, I often say, I often say that is the biggest challenge on site, right? Like, how you have to navigate, like, engaging with the OGs,
Yeah,
and
the
still sort
OGs.
of, yeah, still sort of, because you get people that are much older than you, bro. Like, they're
Hey,
old enough to
man,
be your fathers. Then you have to now tell this
experience,
person what to do. Eh?
man. Hey, it's
Ah, it's
a
crazy.
one.
It's
It's a
crazy.
difficult one.
Yeah, I know that's true, man. Like, I'd like to move forward, right?
Yes.
You have been involved in, it's what you call it, the Sasol Biosludge to feed to gasification project. That sounds
Yes,
massive, bro. Like, I just want to know what's your role in
man.
it, and tell us more about this particular project and what you've learned so far from it.
Man, this project, I've never been in a project like this in my whole life. Honestly speaking, when I got there, it was shell shock, Felt like I was in World War II. I had so many things coming my way, but basically, when I arrived there, my first duty, like I've said before, is checking my drawings, making sure that, all the materials are ordered, number one. Um, or before I actually go there, let me break down the project scope, right? So the project scope was concrete, quite a number of plinths and bases, band walls, surface beds, a little bit of structural steel, drainage, concrete roads, and manholes, as well as concrete pipes. So it was quite a diverse number of structures that we had to build. And basically, what they're trying to do is reduce emissions through building feed to gasification, which is basically they used to burn their sludge, and then now they're going to harvest the gases through burning it into like an enclosed system, if I can put it like that. I'm not the chemical engineer, but that's basically how I understood it. So my duties, like I said before, is managing the materials on site, checking my bending schedules, and make sure that all the bars fit inside that particular structure, whether they be too long or too short. I have to make sure that they're right. Ordering those materials, then going to site and making sure that the levels are correct for that particular structure. I will check the founding level. I will be in contact with the surveyor to set out the works. I have to make sure that each structure is the right dimension away from the others, referencing where it is and making sure it's in the right position. After that, I'll do a founding level inspection where I'll make sure that the elevations are right. After that, or pouring the concrete, before pouring the concrete, checking the slump, checking the concrete slip to make sure that it's the right amount of concrete, checking to see that it's the quality of concrete I want, the slump test, and then moving further up, checking the other sections of the structure. So basically, my role was to manage the materials, the team, and making sure that the structure is built on time and that it's of good quality. Furthermore, I would have to compile our quality packs. So this is to make sure that all the steps have been followed to see that this structure or this material is to the specified quality and it has been signed off by the client. So before it's signed off, I have to do what's called a punch, where you as the resident engineer will come and check my work. And then I'll also call the client, which in this case was Sasol, will come and check if everything has been followed, the right materials, the drawings, the quality, and make sure that there are no cracks in this case. And I think in my experience there, punching was one of the most nerve-wracking things because as the site engineer, I have to make sure that all my checks have been done before that. I had a quite an interesting section where we had a sump, which is basically a submerged pump. And man, we had to build these 3 meter high walls, right? And before we could do that, there was a huge base we had to pour, and it was filled with water. And it was quite a dangerous task because we had to make sure that the excavation was short on both sides, and the client was very strict on that. I've learned quite a lot in terms of safety, which was quite a role I also had to fulfill there, is making sure that my guys have the correct PPE. I am wearing the correct PPE. And, making sure that the client is safe in there when we're doing our inspections, making sure that the water is kept out and, the excavation does not collapse. So it was quite an interesting project in that I had to work with quite a number of other contractors on site. We had piping, we had electrical, we had structural, and accommodating each other on site. On a daily, you'd find a situation where they're working on a certain section we're supposed to be working on, and we have to interface with each other. That's basically what I had to do: punch the project or punch a particular structure, and then hand it over to the client. They sign it off, and yeah, we're happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And what would you say is the difference between, because I gather the client was Sasol in this case. So obviously
Yeah.
that's a private client, like that's a private institution.
Yes.
Um, what have you worked on public government projects?
Yeah, so for example, when I was at Civil Lab, that was a government project, and it was different, to say the least. I know, yeah, it was different. Yeah, I don't know how I can explain it without sounding funny, but the
It's
experience is,
okay.
yeah, it's much different.
Okay, yeah. I'm always curious as to um, the experience of built professionals, built environment professionals in public projects, public sector projects, and private sector projects. But I believe that the differences have been well documented. I'm sure we all know the differences.
Yeah, the private guys are, man, they're very strict. They are very strict,
Mm,
penalizing on time.
mm,
I remember there were a number of occasions where we were delayed by weather or materials, and it was made very clear that we're expecting this on the 9th of July, and that's when it should be there. If it's not done by the 9th of July, you get an early warning. If you don't fulfill it after the early warning, you get penalized. So there's a stark difference, in my opinion, that we need to actually emphasize in government projects that timelines should be kept and quality is paramount. In many occasions in our industry, we find, especially within government projects, that quality and timelines are, they're not as strict and they're not followed. And I think that's sometimes what costs taxpayers quite a lot, paying for those extra time costs, because in our industry, hours mean money, much like in every industry. But for us, if I myself as a site engineer, I am sitting for an extra week on site, how much is that going to cost, the company? How
that's
much is
true.
that going to cost government? So yeah,
Mm,
I think
mm,
there's some improvements that can be made.
yeah. No, I agree 100%, man. We can talk at length about the differences there, but yeah, I
Of
think
course.
you've hit the nail on the head. Um, I want to go further. Like, there's a lot more that I wanted to talk about as far as the technical aspects, but I see our time is like going.
Okay.
Um, I want to hear your perspective, right? About you have a very powerful vision about South Africa's built environment, especially in underdeveloped townships.
Yes.
What do you think? Firstly, let's talk about that vision, and also, what do you think it'll take to realize this particular vision?
Man, I think in the future, I see myself in that space. That's where I want to see myself. But beyond all, I think improving our townships can actually be the backbone of our economy, because a lot of people live there in the first place, and improving it can actually employ those people who are living there. I mean, what better way to be employed than to be employed in the place that you live in? I
Yeah.
think looking at our townships, there's so much that can be done. Our
Mm,
roads, the drainage systems, um, the logistics of keeping the place clean, and just developing the area. Uh,
mm,
for example, I mean, look at Orania. Orania is, I know it's quite a controversial topic, but the people there are actually building their own, home. And
mm,
I think it would be quite great for our townships to, you know, get that mindset of let's build our own home. Or government, it's not the people's responsibility, of course, but government to invest more in our townships, because that's where the economy is. There's so much commerce going on. You've got people doing all sorts of things there. And yeah, I think more investment into our townships will be a great thing. It will it will build the people quite a lot. Because in my opinion, people leave their townships to go to the bigger city, and you've got this brain drain away from the place where you've been born to the big city, and then wherever you are has just been left derelict. So yeah, I really feel like there's a good opportunity for our townships to be, brought up and become something more. Because I can ramble on about this, but our most of our population is found in the townships, and I find it a little bit unfair that everybody must come to the big city to make a living, even though it's where commerce is, but there's a lot happening in our townships that is overlooked. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that a lot. And it's obviously like we all know the real reason behind it is obviously the apartheid system spatial planning. That
Yes,
was
yes, yes.
that was very specific about like keeping a certain group of people away from the city center and making it difficult to access the CBD, right?
Yes.
And there've been a lot of efforts being made by the government to try and make the transition possible by doing certain connections between the cities and the townships in the form of public transportation system,
Yes, yes,
making
yes.
urban mobility like easy so that people can easily access the city. But
Mm.
obviously, we all know the lack of efficiency when it comes to that, right?
Yeah.
And what you are suggesting is I guess a different way of looking at it. Instead of people trying to access the CBD or the city, the urban areas, how about
Yeah.
actually developing the township to
Yeah.
be able to be the place where people actually work, play, and learn, you know?
I mean, it can be a core of industry, obviously not compared to the cities, but over time it can be something that can build, and grow into something else. In the construction sense, having the townships developed allows the people who are actually living in that area, much like we have the incentives in the construction industry where a certain percentage should be for the local community.
Local
But
community.
construction has a lot of potential to actually create jobs, in that area, and also in the sense of maintaining. I feel like maintenance is also quite overlooked, maintaining our roads, maintaining our stormwater drainages, and actually improving on it. I mean, our townships are quite derelict in the sense of drainage and, you know, pollution and the likes. So I think that can definitely grow. And there are a lot of people with great ideas in our townships. Quite a number of industries that are, booming that side. So I think another thing is that's a difficulty for our townships is actually moving from the township into town, logistically as well. So yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of opportunity. There's
Yeah.
opportunity there.
It's
Yeah.
it's also part of why I started this particular brand uh, to explore the different ways that we can improve the infrastructure levels or the infrastructure development aspect of our country and the townships. As much as the concept of townships is really a semi-industrialization of South Africa, it really is unique to South Africa because
It is.
in many other parts of Africa, it's mostly villages, and we are quite developed. I must say, we are quite developed. We have
Definitely.
one of the biggest train network in the whole of Africa still today, and there is huge potential of further development. So there are low-hanging fruits that the government can explore to actually make that integration happen, so that movement
Definitely.
is quite possible. So it's one of the things that I'm passionate about, and I hope to see it happen. Actually,
Definitely, man. Let's move into the space, when time comes, maybe one day,
uh,
we can actually make that difference.
yeah, no, definitely, bro. You've emphasized not being afraid to fail, asking questions and stuff. Can you share an early moment in your career where you failed and struggled, and what did you learn from it?
And failed and struggled. An early career moment. Hmm, that's actually a good question. I'm thinking about my early days at the lab. Like there was a time where I had a lot of pressure on me, a lot of pressure on me, and I was managing an early phase of the project, and it didn't go so well. I made a mistake, and I had to be accountable for it, and I had to get chopped basically. And coming back from that, it made me realize that you know what, as a person you have to be sure, or as an engineer, you have to be sure of what you're doing. You have to be willing to accept when you've made a mistake, which is something that's really grown me in the position I am now. If I make a mistake now, I'm able to say why I've made the mistake. And I think it was a tough time because I had to ask myself a number of questions like, where did I go wrong? What could I have done better? And I think those are things that build us as young professionals, looking back and seeing what we did wrong. And I think what helped me quite a lot in that situation is actually being able to go back and ask those questions. Where can I improve? What did I do wrong? Is there any advice you can give me going forward? So I think that was a tough time. Early career wise, I was not perfect. I can definitely say that. I made a lot of mistakes, some that I may not be able to recall right now, but it hasn't been an easy road. And I would say that going forward and coming up as a young engineer, just don't be afraid to fail. Don't make it a
Yeah, which
norm,
was
but
which
yeah.
which one which is actually my actual next question. Like, what is your advice to students or young professionals in the engineering space? Like, how do they survive? How do they not get intimidated by the fast paced, high stake
Yeah.
net environment that they find themselves in?
Man, I would say be confident in yourself. What you've been taught is not a lie, you know. Usually when you get onto site or being a site engineer, everybody's gonna say to you, "Hey, Mona, there are no books here. There are no books here. This is experience talking." Don't be afraid to say what you've learned, because that's why you went to school, to be able to put into practice what you've learned. And I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. No matter how trivial or dumb it may sound, if you genuinely don't understand something, feel free to ask the people, and you'll find more often than not there'll be somebody who's willing to take you under their wing and guide you throughout that process. And if you fail, ask for guidance. Where have you made a mistake? How can you do better? And just don't be afraid. I think fear is something that is crippling. Don't let fear cripple you. Just go forward, be confident, be strong, and work well with other people. I think the backbone of being a success within the construction industry is learning how to understand and respect and work well with other people. I think that's what got me to where I am. Being able to gel well with other people, communicate effectively, and don't keep things to yourself. That's the worst thing that you could possibly do. If something's
Mm,
going wrong and you know it's going wrong, tell somebody. Yeah.
mm, okay. No, that's awesome, man. Um, there's a lot more that I wanted to ask, but for the sake of time, I think we can wrap it up. Is there anything upcoming that's exciting that we must know about that our audience should keep an eye on?
Man, I hope to get my professional registration this year. That's one thing I'll work on. If I fail, I'll try again. Definitely.
Of course,
Um,
of course.
Definitely looking to grow much further in the construction management field. I think that's more of my calling, construction management, and then further on to project management. Yeah, definitely continuing my schooling. I'm doing a construction supervision course, which I'm supposed to end this year. And yeah, man, like just improve wherever I can. You know, you remember the Kaizen, continual improvement. So yeah,
Yes.
that's where I'm heading. Or I'm hoping to head, yeah.
All right. No, thank you very much for that, man. And where do the people find you? What are your social media net handles?
Feel free to follow me if you want to chat or some questions on LinkedIn as Malelo Mweemba. And you can also check me out on Instagram as Buti Mweemba.
No, great stuff. Great stuff. No, thank you for joining us today. We are really honored to have heard from you. So without further ado, thank you very much. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, Jobs. I can't wait to do it again at the top of a building one day. Who knows?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. All right. No, cheers, brother.